Welcome to Art That Plays and Prays. This is Ginger. I'm glad you're watching my channel. I haven't posted in a while, so I'm excited to be back. In this video, I'm going to share some of my painting secrets. I'll teach you a few tricks I use to build texture on canvas. I'll show you how you can use palette knives to add interesting patterns to your painting. And I'll also show you how to create shadows by dry brushing, how to use crackling medium, and how to layer acrylics to create a patina effect. So my first trick, which is not so much of a secret, is gesso. Store-bought canvases are always primed with gesso. Sometimes they're even triple primed, but I always want to add more. I like Liquitex Super Heavy Gesso because it retains peaks. You can make the surface of your painting as rough and bumpy as you like it. So this product is staple for me. I'm working simultaneously on 3 paintings, so as you can see, I've prepped 3 canvases with heavy gesso. I don't scrimp in my applications. I make sure the surface is as rugged as possible, so when the painting is dry, you can feel the roughness with your hands. When I'm painting, I also don't wash my brushes while I'm working. Either my brushes or my palette knives. I don't wash it. That's my second secret. I dip my brush from one paint color to another without wiping off the previous paints. I don't bother with cleaning the brush, at least not until I'm done with the painting. I just let the colors build up on the bristles, and that's my style. And when I lay them down on the canvas, a lot of interesting colors pop out. They're unexpected mixtures. Some color combinations turn out well, sometimes they don't turn out well. Some mixtures are random, like accidents that turn out really pretty, but sometimes the layering becomes too muddy, and that's when I scrub it here, like what you see in my video. When that happens, I mean when too many non-complementary paints have already built up on the bristles and the painting looks muddy, that's when I clean my brush, and I do that by wiping the brush directly on the canvas, as you saw me do a while ago. I call this my scratch post. I don't want to waste my acrylic paint, so I wipe the excess colors on any part of the canvas, and this scratch post now becomes an underpainting, which sometimes add interesting texture to the piece. If I don't like the scratch post, I just paint over it again, so there's really no problem. I like layering paints with palette knives. By using a palette knife, you can easily cover large areas of the canvas with paint. But because the surface is rough with heavy gesso, some parts of the canvas don't get covered easily. That's where I use my brushes to make sure all white parts are painted. Now there are different types of palette knives available in art stores. You can find them also in Amazon. There are some that have ridges or curls or zigzag patterns that can help you create a different texture in your painting. And I'll show you one that I use later on. It has a jagged edge, just like the sides of a postage stamp. It's rugged. In this next technique, I started by creating an underpainting of red, orange, and yellow paints, some browns and whites. Actually, it doesn't matter what colors you use. As you can see, I even added some black, maybe some purples here and some blue on the underpainting. When I'm done with that, I'll set it aside for a while and just let it dry. Then I'll come back to it later and do something more, which I'll show you what I'll do with it. Now see, I'm also creating more underpainting on the other canvas so that this series will look more cohesive. The design and style will be blending a bit better. Now, in the meantime, while I'm waiting for my underpainting to dry, I'll work on another canvas. This is supposed to be a Christmas lantern here. You know, those star lanterns that light up, the ones you hang as decorations around Christmas time. Anyway, this drawing is supposed to be a lantern, but it also looks like a mandala. Okay, now that my underpainting is dry, see, this has a lot of texture here already created by the brushes. I'll use now this special palette knife to add horizontal squiggly lines on top. The palette knife has a serrated edge, like I said. It's very jagged, it's not smooth. That's why it's perfect for this technique. As you can see, I'm only covering portions of the underpainting. I'm allowing some of the red paints to still show through, and I just used a single color beige paint. Now in the next canvas, I'm using a smooth, broad surface of a different palette knife to create another kind of texture. Here I'm running my hand very lightly across the canvas. I apply just enough pressure to spread the blue paint without covering the entire underpainting. So you still see some of the reds and purples here. This technique is what you use if you want a patina effect in your painting. If you want to create a rustic effect, it looks like old paint that's stripping off. And you can try this technique with different combinations of colors, and it's up to you what colors you want. Now, I wanted to mess up the painting a bit more by throwing in some acrylic inks. Here I used Liquitex, just a few drops of orange here and there. I let the ink flow by itself and create marks on the surface. And this can be very messy, so that's why I have a paper towel here to just absorb my excess ink. I did blow the ink a bit to make the ink move horizontally, so you might have noticed the paper towel was moving. That's because I was blowing the canvas. This can be a bit messy, so be prepared with paper towels to just clean up the mess and the drips. As you see here, I've built up layers of paint on my scratch post, but it's not enough to cover the canvas, so I decided to paint over it with more reds and blacks. I'll prepare this section for another technique that I'll show you later. For now, I want to cover the area and blend enough colors to put depth into the painting. By using different shades, you can see I'm using different kinds of colors here: black, red, orange, even a bit of blue. And by blending enough colors, I add depth into the painting and I prevent the painting from looking very flat and boring. See, you can see here that I put some interest into the surface. Now, while waiting for this underpainting to dry, I'll switch again to our Christmas lantern and work on it some more. When working on a painting series, in this case we have 3, I switch from one canvas to another because I want to use the same sets of paints I already have on my palette, and that way there's continuity. Even if each canvas has its own subject. In this case, I have a jeepney, I have an ice cream cart, and another mandala looking lantern. So even if my subjects are all different, the painting style and the colors are almost similar, so that the entire series, they look cohesive, and they'll blend well together when you hang them side by side on your wall. Okay, now that our underpainting is dry, we can proceed to the next technique I want to teach you. This is a kind of texture I often use in my art. I like to add a bit of glitter to my work. Some metallic acrylic paints work for this style. If you want to try it, you can use either gold, copper, or bronze acrylic paints. Apply it with your fingers like what you see me do here. Don't use a brush. Just gently rub the paint on the rough parts of the canvas. Remember how I used gesso, right, in the beginning? The gesso which created ridges on the surface. Make sure to put the metallic paints on those peaks to highlight them. I also applied some on the corners, and here I'm putting some on the edges of the canvas, so that I want to create a more rustic looking border. See how it shines when you tilt the canvas. You can see that it glitters on the sides, right? So that's why it's important to use super heavy gesso, because it's that bumpiness that creates the ridges that I can use for this technique. Like, I cannot apply gold glitter if the canvas is flat. It's not going to look as pretty. But here, if you put it on the peaks, on the bumps created by the gesso, then you can make it stand out. Those bumps, you can make them stand out. Make sure you don't over apply the gold. You don't want to totally cover up the underpainting. The gold is just a highlight. Now the next painting technique I'm showing you here looks a bit messy in the beginning, but I promise you it'll look better later on. Again, we're using a palette knife. I'm running the knife horizontally, very lightly across the canvas. I'm again trying to create a patina effect here, just like what we did a while ago. We want to make it look like the paint has peeled off from, like, you know how old pieces of furniture have paint chipping off. So we want to create something like that. A while ago we used only one color. We just used the dark blue, but this time I'm going to use 4 different colors. Blue is the first one I laid down, green followed by brown here, and in a bit I'll put some more black just to highlight. Now this rustic section of the painting is supposed to look like scallops, like petals of a flower, but it's hard to form circles or hemispheres with a palette knife, so I'll be using a brush later on to define the borders of the petals. As you can see, I'm painting all around it with a brush. The reds, I'll use reds and yellows. And later for the inner circle, I'll use blue paint. And all of these I'm doing to define the shape of the petals, because the palette knife can't do that. My patina effect is like all over the place, so I kind of lost the shape of my lantern. But the solid colors I'm laying down all around the petals will help the textured part, the patina part, to pop out even more. The next painting technique is the crackle. Many of you already may be familiar with this, and there are tons of crackling medium available out there, and it doesn't matter which brand you use. But the basic thing you need to remember, when you want to create a crackling effect in your art, you have to pick two colors that are sharply contrasting each other. One color would be your underpainting, which is the one at the bottom, is the color that will show through the cracks when you're done with the painting. Then you also have to pick a second color, which is your top coat. In my demonstration here, I'm using pink as the underpainting and black as my top coat. But before I apply the black, I had to put the crackling medium. Make sure you use an old brush for the crackling medium, because the medium is sticky and it can damage your brush. You don't want to waste your expensive brushes for this application. I prefer to use the stiff hog bristles rather than soft synthetic brushes. The Taclon brushes, they're too soft for this, and it won't come nice. It won't appear nice at the end. They won't make the cracks look very pronounced, or it's more dramatic if you use a stiff hog bristle. See, I'm putting my top coats here now, and this is what it looks when it dries. It will take a while to dry. Just let it air dry on it. Well, I prefer to just air dry instead of use a hair dryer. The last technique I want to share with you is what I call dry brushing. Sometimes there are sections in my painting where I only use one paint color, like what you see here. When I do that, the effect looks so flat, right? If you look at it, it's so plain. It's like what you see in a coloring book, just plain, one tone, no depth, no shading kind of color. In other words, it looks flat and boring. To make the painting interesting, I add shadows by using a dry brush. Again, it is best to use a bristle brush, one that is stiff. Just slightly dip the tip of the brush to load up a little paint. Look what I'm doing here is so little saturation. Make sure it's only a little paint. You don't need to oversaturate the brush, otherwise you'll end up painting more than a shadow, and the paint will look very solid, and that's not the effect we're going for. Dry brushing is a great technique, and I use it frequently, different parts where a shadow will add depth to a subject. Sometimes I also use a palette knife to just create lines and to add some interesting texture, like what I'm using here with my in decorating the tree trunk. And so when the painting is all done, make sure to apply varnish to preserve your art. There are many kinds of varnishes, some in spray form, some liquid. You can pick from matte finish or glossy. I prefer Liquitex High Gloss, which I apply with a foam brush. Just be careful when you use liquid varnish, because overbrushing can damage your painting and make the colors look very cloudy and less vibrant. I find that 2 or 3 coats are enough, and you brush from left to right, okay, with a foam brush. There you have it, friends. I've shared with you my painting secrets, palette knife techniques, texture styles, and more. I hope you found these tips helpful. If you want to share your own tips, go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like this video, please help me by pressing the subscribe button and visiting my other videos in my channel. And thank you again for your support. This is your host, Ginger, from Art That Plays and Praise. God bless you, and see you again soon.